All right, in the last video, we learned how to set up our audio hardware to work with Cubase. Now it's time to put that hardware to work and do some audio recording just for basic tracks. All right, so here's our blank project. It's got nothing in it like we talked about before. There's no channels or mixer channels or anything because there isn't anything in the project. So let's create some audio tracks to record into. And we do that by, in this area right here, if we right click, we can add all these different kinds of tracks that are available to us. Or if we click this little add button up here, the plus button, same thing. Lots of stuff to add here. We'll get more into that later. But for the time being, let's just add an audio track. So we're just going to add one audio track, and we can make this mono, stereo, left, right, center, 5-1. Lots of choices, but for the time being, we're just going to keep it mono, and then let's just name it audio track 1. And currently it's going to the main outs. That's what we just set up in the last video. We hit add track, and it creates our audio track for us right there. And then on the left-hand side, we see the inspector window with all the relevant information. All right, so anywhere in this window, if we click and just double-click with our mouse again, it's going to add that same dialog and prompt us for a name. Let's call this one audio track 2, and we'll keep it mono as well, still going to the main outs. We could change these at any time if we have different selections. Add track, and now we got a couple of audio tracks to record into. So let's click on track number 1, and right here, if we just expand this first inspector tab on our title audio track, we see all the relevant track information. So we can see the volume and the panning. We can see what input it goes into, for example. So there's our two inputs we just made in the last video, mic input, line input. So we could change that if we needed to. But for the time being, let's keep it at mic input because we're going to record the microphone that we tested here in the earlier videos. Still going to the main outs right there, for example. So that's our relevant track info. We can mute the track from here. We can solo the track from here. We can arm the track for recording. That doesn't mean we're recording right now. We're just arming the track and getting it ready. The button right here is track monitor. And if I click on that, it will enable all of the presets, effects, and plugins that are currently assigned to that track, but you will incur latency. So for the time being, that's kind of a rabbit hole. We'll get back to that when we get more into advanced recording techniques. The E button right here opens up the editor for the window of everything that's relevant for that track. So this is the entire track settings at a glance. All the effects, all the plugins, the sends, the Q sends, the level, the EQ, everything that has anything to do with this track shows up in this window. And that's right here on this little editor button. So the track editor, we're definitely going to get more into that later. But for now, we're just going to do some basic audio recording. That little indicator right there tells us that the track is mono. From here, we can read and write automation. We can also choose not to read automation if there is automation on the track by clicking that button. And then this is the lanes button. This simply shows us all the lanes that are involved with that audio track. All right, so for here, if we come down and we've armed the track for recording, if I click on our transport button down here, on the record button, we'll hear a count in. And then we start to record, and we can see that by the wave file that's up here. It's verifying that it's recording. And if I come down here on the lower right hand side and click the plus or minus buttons here on the bottom, I can zoom in and see that track more clearly horizontally, and the ones on the far right in the lower are the vertical zooms up and down. All right, let's hit stop. And there's our first audio recording right there. So real quick before we do anything, let's talk about some of the things that are specific to each clip. If we look at the clips, we notice there's a couple of little rectangles all around the clip here. So the two rectangles on the lower left and right sides over here, those guys we can click and drag, and those we can edit or expose as much or little as the clip as we need, for example, so we can clean up the tops and tails really quickly. Those are our little click drag handles. The ones right in the middle, there's one rectangle right here in the middle. If I click and grab that one on the top and bring that up and down, that's clip gain. So that will make the clip volume louder or quieter. It's a great way to even up a bunch of uneven clips that are radically different from one another. If I look at the one right at the very end on the right-hand side in the middle, this one, if I click and drag that to the right, I can instantly duplicate the clip rather, and it's super handy for loop-based productions and things where you want to do lots of copies of things. All right, the last two things are the two little triangles at the top left and right sides. And those guys we can click and drag and create instant fades, just like that. So super fast. Super easy to create just the clip you need with a little bit of fade, the start and stop, and even out the levels. We'll talk lots more about all the advanced modes in a future video, but that's basic audio recording. Next up, we're going to learn how to deal with MIDI and latency. We'll see you in the next video.